Spheres blima. So middle of the Mishnah Gimel. So the Mishnah says like this: there are 10 spheres. These spheres are blima, which means that they're without substance. They don't have. So it's chacham as ma. So it means that they're coming. The spheres are revealing from the Ein Sof. So the misper eser boys chamesh keneged chamesh. That the 10 spheres, we say there are 10. So the first thing the Mishnah is going to say, what the Sefer is going to say, is that these 10 correspond to the 10 etzbois, the 10 fingers. Fingers both means on the hand and on the feet. Chamesh keneged chamesh, so it's divided in 5 and 5. We'll understand what this means. Because generally when we talk about the spheres, we're talking about either if they're seen as nekudas, which is Olam HaToyah, the world of chaos, then each one is 1 point, and they're unrelated to each other. But if you're talking Olam HaTikun already, they're all, the spheres are divided into 3. There's a right column, a left column, a middle column. But here it's 5 against 5. And it's Chamish Bris Mechvanis, and this is the bris, that it's Mechuvan, it's exactly in the middle. Be'emtza Kemilas Aloshan Kemilas Mahar. And it's connected to the bris. Bris is a covenant, a connection. That's connected to the bris, connected to the speech. So the person's mouth is in the middle of the body. That's the upper milah. Also the word milah comes from the word word. And the milas of the lower part of the body. Okay, that's what he says. Then he says, weiter. The next Mishnah is Spheres blima esav leitesha esav le'achadaser. It says that these 10 spheres, which are not named, so this is the first Sefer that we have that speaks about the spheres b'chal. This is the first time it's mentioned. And so, first of all, the Sefer Yetzirah is saying that everything that you see on the outside, in the objective world, in the big world, is also reflected in the internal world. So if you see something that exists outside, it has to also exist inside. Each one is a reflection of each other. There's Olam, Shana, Nefesh, time, space, and consciousness are all connected to each other. So that's the first thing. And then it says that it's specifically 10, not 9, not 11. So what does this mean? What does this mean? So the Ramban, if you look at the Ramban, first thing the Ramban says, this Pirush is miyuchas l'Ramban. It's a tribute to Ramban. We'll see soon that there's another Talmud that is connected to the Ramban that probably he wrote it. Maybe the Ramban wrote only on the first parak, but the other one's written by somebody else. But the Ramban over here writes, that the reason why we're saying this, that Yudas boys, Mr. Yudas boys, that you want to say that everything that exists in the outside is a reflection of the inside. So if you're talking about something that exists in the outside world, it must mean that it exists within the inside world. And we explained before, which is a very important idea, that you cannot understand the outside world. We don't understand the objective reality only from our subjective truth. The only reason why we can have any type of coherence or understanding of things that exist outside of ourselves is because we have a certain sense of that exists within ourselves. And as a reflection of that truth, we project into the world. Let's say, for example, I said this before, but it's in the gap. Means 2 things. First of all, it means, and this is a yesod, that the reason why all these systems work in a particular way is only so they should make sense to us. Because otherwise, the Boira can create instantaneously yesh ma'ayin, and that's the end of the story. How? So kol yachol. Whatever Hashem wants. It was created. How to create it? I don't know. I don't understand. The reason why we have this whole Seder Shalshlas, this whole understanding of worlds and spheres and neshamas and malachim, all these things, is only because of Msarach Salakah. Because Msarach Salakah, because that's the way we understand creation. We understand if we want to create something in this world, we have to go through a process. So we can say if that's true for us, then it has to be true if it's true on the microcosmic level, it has to be true on the macrocosmic level. It has to be true both ways. The other thing is, it also works in reverse. The only way we can understand the world outside of ourselves and to say that there's some semblance of like laws of nature is because we observe laws within our own nature. So because we see some type of coherence, some type of structure that exists within our own nature, we can project it out onto the world at large. Otherwise, the world is chaos. The world doesn't have order. Order is only because there's order within our own consciousness. It's important to understand. This is the way all science, the foundation of all observation of the world comes because there's a certain sense within ourselves that we expect a certain thing, a certain way, certain things work a certain way. So because they work in a certain way, that's what we can project to understand it. So the whole structure, we talk about Seder Ishtalshalos, is because we understand processes as well, that we have Ishtalshalos. First you have a thought, then you say it, and then you do it, right? Things take stages. So this idea of stages is not instantaneous. You decide you want a house, let's say, it's not instantaneous that a house becomes. There's a koyach, and there's a koyach chaser poil, which means that there's a process. The koyach, you have a potential for something, and then it becomes a poil, it becomes an actuality. And it's a process. L'mayla ein koyach chaser poil. L'mayla ein koyach chaser poil, so then everything could already be instantaneously. We don't say that way. The reason why we don't say that way is because of Psar Echsa. So the first Maramokim that we want to look at is from Rabbi Ziel of Gerona. We just spoke about Gerona. This is Rabbi Ziel of Gerona. Who's Rabbi Ziel of Gerona? He is probably the writer of this pirush that says Ramban. He's probably the author of this pirush. There was a Yid.
You're saying on Sefer.
On Sefer. Maybe the first parak was written by the Ramban. A lot of things that we attribute to the Ramban, we say it's the Ramban, but it's lav dafka the Ramban. For Eger Kosinov probably is the Ramban's. The pirush of the Ramban on Shir Hashirim. Pirush of Ramban on Shir Hashirim is written by Reb Ezra. There's Azriel and Ezra. They were brother-in-laws, and these three, Reb Azriel, Ezra, and the Ramban were Talmidim of Reb Yitzchak Saginar. Yitzchak Saginar was a son of the Ravid, the famous Ravid from Paskirs, the one that argues with the Rambam a lot. His son was blind. Yitzchak Saginar means he was blind. He's considered the Rebbe of all Kabbalah. Pshat is he's the first one to speak openly about Kabbalah. His three main Talmidim were Rebbe Ziel, Ezra, and the Ramban. We actually have surviving letters that, if you're familiar a little with the geography of where this is Girona, which is in Spain, in Aragon, in that part of Spain, which is the north of Spain, correct, connected to the south of France. The south of France is Provence. Jews call it Provence. It's not a real thing. It's a made-up Yiddish vernacular. We call it Provence. Provence was a little area in the south of France, and they're little tiny towns, like Paskirs and Montpellier, tiny little towns in Spain, in France, that had very big concentrations of learning. There are a lot of Rishonim lived there. Chachmei L'Nil, you ever heard of Chachmei L'Nil? It was L'Nil there. Very, very, very big Talmid Chacham lived there. The Balei Taisus lived there, yeah. But it was very small. Very, very small, meaning a few thousand families, the whole thing, but it was very, very concentrated, very big learning. This Yitzchak Saginar traveled to Spain, and some say that he actually lived in Girona also. And some say we even know where his house is, where he lived, because we know where Rabbeinu Yonah lived, who's a contemporary of the Ramban, both Talmidim of that generation. And Yitzchak Saginar, these Rebbe Ziel and Ezra started a yeshiva in Gerona to teach Kabbalah. And we have letters from their Rebbe, Yitzchak Saginar, that you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't teach Kabbalah publicly. This is why, one of the reasons why the Ramban, when he wrote his Pirush, Al-Atayr, he keeps on saying Zel Soid. He doesn't actually explain what the secret is, because he has him sorry from his Rebbe that he's not going to reveal the secret. Later on, the Talmidei Ramban, who's Rabbeinu Bechaya, they're not Mamish Talmidim, but people that associate with Talmidei Bechaya, the Rakanti, and others, they translate the Ramban and explain the Ramban. So this Sefer is written by Rebbe Ziel of Gerona. So this is the beginning of the 1200s. Now, he wrote a Sefer that's called, it doesn't really have a name, but it's called today, it's called Bir Esespheres. Some say it's called Pirush Esespheres. And it's actually a really fascinating Sefer. It's a short Sefer, it's a short book. But if you learn this correctly and you know how to read this correctly, you'll see some of the major foundations of Teres HaSoid is in this Sefer. A few years after that, not a few years, but many years later, with the Megurush Svard, so this is in the 1200s, Megurush Svard is the late 1400s, early 1500s. There was a Yid called Meir ben Gabbai, and he was he's the author of the Avodas HaKodesh. So Avodas HaKodesh quotes a lot from Brazil, but mainly he wrote a Sefer called Derech HaMunah. And Derech HaMunah is basically, and I'll explain you what the Sefer B'Yas Sefiros is. Derech HaMunah is sort of like a copy, and he says it clearly, he's copying that the zeal of Gerona. He's doing the same style. What's that style? The style is question and answers. There's someone that's asking a question, and there's someone that answers the question. There's a Shayla, there's a Meshiv, then they have different names. What this character is. Yeah, much before. We'll get there. A few hundred years. This is in the mid 1500s. Meir ben Gabbai, and he also wrote the Sefer Telas Yaakov on Tefillah, which is a very popular Sefer. Also, these are the three main Svarim they wrote. Eventually, after Megurush, he was young. He was a young boy by the Spanish Inquisition. He moved to Eretz Yisrael. He's buried somewhere in Eretz Yisrael. I'm not sure where. So Kitzer, he has this. This is questions and answers. That's the B'Yas Sefiros, and it's we're going to start with the first. It's a third entry. The third question that's asked. The first question that he's asked, how do we know that there's a creator? How do we know that there's the Ein Sof? This is a chiddush, by the way, because this phrase, Ein Sof, infinite one, infinite light, or infinity, is also not found in Chazal. We don't have this lashon. That's not found in Gemara, Yerushalmi, Medrash. This language of Kol HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof. This Ein Sof is also Spanish. It comes from an earlier period in Spain when the Jews more lived in Andalus, that's the south of Spain. They lived there in the early 1100s. Then they were pushed out, like the Rambam. This is from Shlomo Ibn Gamriel, from the Makar Chaim. He's the first one that coined this phrase, Ein Sof. So this is a few hundred years later than this. Shlomo Ibn Gamriel, a famous poet. Kesser Malchus, a famous poet. Sefer Makar Chaim is. Anyways, so here's the Shaila. In Yetzirah Vashoy, you can look inside. In Yetzirah Vashoy, Lishol be'eza hecher tachriach yesh sham spheres. Kirtzoni lemer ke'ein sham rak ein soif levad. What's the hechrich? Why are we forced, why are we compelled to say that there are spheres? Okay, so we established that this is the Ein Sof. That's the second entry was Im Yishashel Mi Yachrein Laham Bein Sof. So we established a fact that there is the Ein Sof. Now that we established that it is the infinite one, or the Ored Sof, who said there has to be spheres? Maybe the infinite one creates instantaneously the Bria. There's the Boyer. There's an expression of the Boyer which is called infinity, whatever we understand this. And this infinite one created the Bria. Why do we need this whole structure of the Ein Sof? Remember, you learned the Tshuva Sarah Rivash. It's the same question. So he writes like this: Tshuva. Ein Sof hu shleimus bli chesaron. You have to understand that Ein Sof is shleimus. Shleimus means that it's whole, it's perfection, without any chesaronis, without any possibility of absence, of lack. It's the wholeness. Ein Sof is whole. V'im teimar sheyesh lekoich bli gvul, ve'en lekoich b'gvul, and if you say this Ein Sof, this infinite. Now, this infinite is not atzmuse hanelam. It's not the essence of the Creator. We're not talking about the essence of the Creator. We're talking about a revealing of light. Light. Why does Chazal, but more Kabbalah? They're amak. Yeah, correct. But we're going to say l'shittas ari that it's not the Ein Sof. It's not the Ein Sof. So why is it called oir? Because oir represents a light that's coming from, right? If there's an oir, there has to be a moir. We're not talking about the moir. The moir is the source of the light. When you're talking about the or, you're talking about the reflection of this mar, the light that's emanating from this mar, from the source of light. In this Ein Sof, which we learned last week, this Ein Sof has to be or me'ein amar. That's why we can call it, that's why the whole shaila of the Chuvas HaRivash was, how can you daven and you're mechaven to the spheres, you seem to be shituf, you're actually saying that, so you're saying, no, you're not mechaven to the sphere itself, you're mechaven to the atzmos sphere, which is the oil of the sphere, the light of the sphere, which the light of the sphere, we say, is also just a revelation. So how can we daven to the oil? So you say, no, because the oil is mein amar. The light is a reflection of it's just like the sun rays, the light of the sunlight is a reflection of the sun itself.
It's an Elo Va'alul that's also Mahus.
That's correct. It's the same Mahus. Correct. Correct. It's not a Nevdal. Correct.
It's still only from our perspective, though.
We're only talking from Ar. Beyond Ar we can't talk because that's mitzidoi. That's the language of Nefesh HaChaim, right? That's Hashem's perspective. Our perspective, we're seeing a revelation of this. We're seeing the world. Forget about everything else. We're seeing a world. We see ourselves. We see our hands. I don't feel. You don't sense the boyer, the pulsating existence of the boyer in every single thing. You see time, space, consciousness. You see separation, which means that it's a revelation of something. That's an oir of. Now, what's the oir of? Okay, that's already. You're going to try to see it as the oir of the moir. It's already a perception. Oir is already in the world of perception. If there's no oir, there's no perception. So this Ein Sof, which is the Or Ein Sof, has to be shleimus b'li chasar. It has to be shleimus, has to be complete without any possibility of absence. And if you say that this koyach v'Ein Sof is only bli gvul, is only infinite, vein l'koyach b'gvul, but doesn't have the potential to be gvul, atam chas shlemusay, then you're saying that it's incomplete. This is the famous for the Avodas HaKodesh. That this is much before. This is what I'm saying. This is the Avodas HaKodesh. Yeah, this is the marker. So he writes like this: if you say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof, the light, is only infinite and doesn't have the potential koyach b'gvul, doesn't have a koyach b'gvul, then at b'chas b'shlemus, then you're saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light is gvul in being only infinite. It's finite by its limitation that it can only express itself in infinity.
So he can't create a rock that he cannot pick up.
No, we'll see why not. But no, I mean yes and no. But it's like no. The answer is no. Not because he can't. Because it's no, because that's the absurd. I want to say, I actually had this conversation with someone a few days ago. I was trying to explain to him that when we say that Hashem, the Atzmius, or the Ein Sof, holds paradox, which Chazal call Nimna Nimnois, Makim Aram Enim Amida, which means that you're saying that it has measurement and doesn't have measurement. So if you measure the Aron, you actually measure it as 2.5 amas. But if you put it in the base in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you measure each direction. It seems that it's 5 in each direction, which doesn't have any space. So it has space and doesn't have space. That's illogical, right? It's contradictory and it's illogical. That's paradox. It's both a wave and a particle. It's both space and non-space. Fine, but to say that Hashem is and is not not paradoxical. It's just silly. It actually doesn't mean anything. If I say something that's paradoxical means there's this truth, there's a measurement, and then there's a non-measurement, and this holds this space that holds these two truths together. No. We're talking about the koyach of Ein Sof.
But there's no measurement.
I understand. No, but I'm saying. What's I'm saying? Doesn't have to.
He creates the light.
Got it. What you're saying, what your argument is we don't understand. So you can say so the whole Psarech Salikah, the whole Torah Kabbalah falls aside, which means it happened. This is the fact. The world exists. Why? I don't know. How? I don't care.
He did it.
That's it. That's the end of the story. That you can do that. It's a perfectly. Yeah.
There's an existence and non-existence is a human terminology. So to say that Hashem does exist, if he doesn't exist, it's still being caught in the trap of human language.
It's not only a trap of human language. It's a trap of absurdity. It's actually absurd. It's not making it bigger. If I say that you are infinite, let's say example, I say you're so infinite that you both contain, like the way that he says it, both the power of finitude and infinity. Okay, I recognize these are both potentials. I can infinitely express myself and I can finitely hold myself down, which these are two positive things, let's say. Or I'm measured and I'm not measured. These are two positive things. But if I say that you're a paradoxical existence, that you both exist and don't exist, that's just absurd. What is it saying?
That's what Ein Sof is.
No, but I'm saying if you don't exist, when you say you don't exist, doesn't mean anything. So then saying you exist doesn't mean anything. If I say that you don't exist means just as much as you do exist, then technically you don't exist. If I say atzmus means, to use another language, if you say atzmus means existence and non-existence, so then it's non-existence. Just like it's existence, so it doesn't mean anything. The whole word, the whole, huh? No, it does not. No, the whole, it negates the whole idea of what we're talking about. You're saying there's a boira. Yeah, I'm talking about the rock. The same idea.
You're arguing against the Ramak in favor.
No, I'm arguing against the rock idea. Because to say that, I'm just saying a paradox needs to hold the tension of two truths. Truth and a lie is silly. Actually, it's not paradoxical. It doesn't mean anything. If I say there's a truth that things work in a wave pattern, things on a particle pattern, or things work in Yediyah and things work in Bechira, and you say that Yediyah and Bechira are paradoxical, but they work simultaneously, okay, that's holding a paradox of two truths. If I say there's a truth that Hashem exists, and there's a truth that Hashem cannot exist also, because He's so infinite, He cannot exist, then His existence doesn't mean anything. Because then it's the world of absurdity. If it's not clear, we'll move forward. But that's really what he's saying. He's saying the koich hagvul is not a chesaron. It's a thing, just like there's a koich bilti balgvul. But it's in our minds, bilti balgvul, infinity, seems like a bigger quality than finitude. So he's saying no. If you say he's only infinite, but he's not finite, not he, his light, the oirance of his light is only infinite, but not finite. That is machasa b'shlemus. And you're saying that Hashem is not complete. Because in our shlemus, there's a shlemus, a completion that we call infinite, and there's a shlemus that we call finite. Right? There's a certain type of shlemus in being finite. There's a shlemus of being infinite. Okay. And if you say that the finite that exists within the kaviyachal was a finite that then expressed itself outward, now is no longer part of the infinity. Now you're saying that the finite was within, now the finite is without, right? So then it's separate, then it's a chesaron again. You're back to square one. And since we say that Hashem is a shalom, is a complete, there's nothing lacking, Yesh lanu loimer behecher shu bigvul mibli gvul. There's a gvul of the bli gvul, which means that the gvul that exists within the kaviyachol, within the Creator, within the infinite light, is bli gvul. Right? It's the finite within infinity. Correct, and therefore it's infinite. It's infinite finitude. Correct. In other words, if it didn't express itself out of itself, but it's within itself, you must say, otherwise it's not shleimus. But if you must say that finitude is the infinity that exists within finitude. That finitude is the finitude that exists within infinity. This gvul, which yesh l'koyach, but gvul says that's the spheres, which is. Once there's the revealing of that gvul, of the finitude, now we can talk about shleimus, completion, and we can talk about chesed. When it's receiving the light, then it's shalom. Therefore, we say kaviyachol, that there's a process that we can talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kaviyachol, which there's the place of completion and the place of chesaron. How can we talk about chesaron? How can we say Yigdal Koyach Adnai? How can we use this language of Akaviyachal that we're giving something l'mayla? We're giving something that our actions matter. How can we talk about actions mattering if it's shleimus? The definition of something that's shalom, if something is whole doesn't need anything. If I say that your actions have value, I must say that there's some type of chesaron, because that your actions is filling that emptiness, that void. But how could it be void? How could it be anything that's not shalom? We're talking about the shleimus. So we're saying when all this conversation, which is important, all the conversation where it talks about where there's a chesaron or a shleimus, the possibility of wholeness and the possibility of absence of wholeness only exists already once there's already the revealing of spheres. Once there's a process of something that exists, kaviyachal, again, it's or l'mein amor, but once there's something already exists that seems to be outside the shleimus of the way the gvul exists, the finitude exists with infinity, but it exists as a finite thing that exists outside of infinity, and sometimes it's filled with infinity, which is filled with the light of infinity, and sometimes it's absence of the light of infinity, then we can talk about us.
So it's like an intermediary state?
Yes, it's an intermediary stage. He doesn't write this, but we know this later from the Ari, that's what the tzimtzum does. What does the tzimtzum do? The tzimtzum reveals the koyach hagvul to be separate, the finitude to be separate from the koyach habilti b'gvul. What's the tzimtzum? The tzimtzum is our life. This is a reduction of the tzimtzum. But we look at this world and we see finitude, and we see things, times and space. This is all because of the tzimtzum. Which means if yesh lekoyach b'gvul, we have to say the yesh lekoyach b'gvul. That Kadosh Baruch Hu has koyach b'gvul. That Kadosh Baruch Hu had the koyach b'gvul that exists within infinity is bilti b'gvul. And when does it become gvul? When does it become finitude? When does it become the possibility of shleimus hachatzar? Because the way it exists, in the way finitude exists within infinity, it's actually infinite. So there's no possibility of chesaron. Are you following the logic here? The possibility of chesaron only occurs when finitude appears itself to be outside of infinity.
The only reason I'm following is because of the Rashab.
Exactly, this is all the Rashab. And the reason.
No understanding.
Yeah, this is all types of Rashab. And the only reason why you can sense it is because of the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum allows for finitude to appear to be in a place that's separate from the infinity, and because it's finitude, which means atzilus, bri, yitzirah, whatever you're talking about, you can talk about that our actions matter. And we said this a few times ago. Not only do our actions matter, not only is it a platonic idea, it's that there's a system above and where everything's being affected below, but below affects the above. How can we affect above? Which means there's a zivuk tmidi in the language of the Ari, and a zivuk she'ena tmidi. Zivuk tmidi is the zivuk of ava. Is Abba v'Ima are always in the zivuk tmidi, which means that the moichin of Abba v'Ima, the moichin that's giving creation existence, is always sustainable. It's nothing to do with us. The world exists without us doing anything. It's just existing. What's our chiddush? That's a zivuk she'ena tmidi. We're trying to miyachid zun and malchus. We're trying to create Zal Malchus to create it. What does that actually mean? A very, very simple language. It means not only does the world function, but now there's the revealed tainog and the real pleasure for the creation. That's a chiddush. That's a zivuk she'ena tmidi, which means that Zor Rampin and Malchus can be separated. And what we're doing in this world is miyachad Zor. What we're doing is we're creating a zivuk she'ena tmidi, and we're bringing a chiddush to creation. Translate this at a very, very, very simple level. Should we translate the 1,000 levels down? The 1,000 levels down is like this. The world, the way it exists, right? Let's say without without our participation, without our mitzvahs, without doing anything, the world exists without us doing anything. Because that's Hashem, which is a zivuk tmidi that the world should exist. What are we adding to the bria? We're adding to the bria that there should be a geschmack in the bria. That the oil that comes down to this world should not be achar ba'achar, but should be panim upon him. It shouldn't be back to back, but it should be face to face. Like I can feed someone from today to next year, because the guy's on kest. He's an Adam of kest. You just pay him. But then you have a geschmack, and you say, no, but I really want to give you money. That's panim upon him. When a yid does a mitzvah, they're drawing down Zohar and Malchus, which means you're creating that desire and the midah, so to be exact. There's a lack of, yes, that's correct. That's correct. So how can we talk about lack? Lack can only be spoken about post-tzimtzum.
Tzimtzum is separate, like creation, so to speak.
Tzimtzum is the infinite light. Yeah, it's not tzimtzum k'pshutei, of course. That tzimtzum is the infinite light contracting within itself. To use a Chassidish, even Rav Nachman talks about this, it's a very simple thing. If you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody, and you're smarter than them, and you realize that there's a guy sitting in the conversation that's completely over their head, right? And the person feels lost, because like, Nebuch, you're talking on a very deep level with someone. There's a third guy sitting there. You're tzimtzum, which means you don't say as much as you really think, or you don't say everything, and all of a sudden, you put a limit to your words, and all of a sudden the other person rises up. So what you did was, this person was always there. This koyach hagvul was always there. This finite guy with katnas hamoichin was always there. But because of such a neviah moichin, the godless, such greatness, the cotton was not recognized. You do tzimtzum, the cotton all of a sudden perks up. Sometimes too much, this is the problem with ktanim. But it perks up, and all of a sudden the person that has no seichel opens their mouth. This is the idea of the gvul rising. So the tzimtzum allows for the gvul to rise. That's the nekuda.
Could you say that the yichud she'ena tzmidi is us choosing to bring revelation?
The yichud she'ena tzmidi is a lot of different ways how to say this. The Alter Rebbe actually talks about this in this week's parsha. The Alter Rebbe says that the yichud tzmidi, it's really Torah Samagid, that it's a tzipah ha'medaberes. It's a chiddush, right? The tzipah ha'medaberes is like the bird that this is a mashal from the Magid. That tzipah ha'medaberes is a chiddush. When you have a person talking, it's not such a novelty. You have a parrot talking, it brings pleasure. What's the greatest pleasure? The greatest pleasure is then when we undo creation. If the bria is from yesh ba'ayin, if we can do from the bria comes ma'ayin liyesh, I'm sorry. The bria is ma'ayin liyesh. From nothingness becomes somethingness. And then everything is the yesh. Everything is this revolving of another yesh. It's the shtalshalus of yesh. From atzilus to bria, everything's in the yesh. We have the potential for koyach habchira to undo that. To choose to be unaffected by life. Right? If you go through life in an autopilot, then you're like a tree. Or like an animal. Right? The moment the DNA is like planted in this tree, the tree is going to give birth to another tree, and the tree is going to, that's what's going to happen. The lion gives birth to the lion gives the lion, and this is repeated. If you live your life without free choice, and most people do, by the way, just lahayr, because free choice is a big deal. Most people are just like autopilot. They're just effects an effect of an effect of an effect. If you're doing that, you didn't do anything in this world. You're basically living like a tree or like an animal. But if one moment you stop yourself and say, my yesh now tells me, my cause and effect reality tells me I should get angry at this person. They insulted me, my normal default mode is scream at them. And I choose to stop. What I just did was, I took yesh and made it an ayin. Right? That's what I did. I undid the process. I broke the process. Bitla yesh. What I did in this moment, my effect of my action will have a ripple effect in the entire creation because I undid something in the cosmos that never existed till this moment. So my effect of doing bittul yesh, which means I stop my yesh to become ayin, I'm turning my yesh into an ayin, will have an effect in the entire universe because the whole system, it's a closed system. So everything from the highest to the lowest and everything all in the cosmos and the entire creation is all interaffected with each other, right? That's even a scientific level. Everything, it's one organism. If one organism bumps out of the system, the whole system changes. So the Alter Rebbe says, if you break your little yesh, if you hold yourself back from being angry when you're normally going to be angry, the malachim and Olam HaBriya are going to sing a different type of tune. Because they have a new chiddush now. There's a chiddush in the Bria. There's like a novelty. There's a quirk in the system. Right? By the way, this is actually a fascinating thing that only modern man can understand this. Because up until modern man, we thought that the system was actually locked. Right? That's what we thought about the universe. At least some people, whoever thought about the universe, thought the universe was locked system. Now we know the system is rigged. There's actually quirks in the system. That's the whole thing of quantum mechanics. The system is not absolute. Time and space are not absolute. Now we can actually understand this whole conversation. If you lived 150 years ago, you had a problem with this. You'd have to be a maimon that it's true.
Today, quantum mechanics itself, you have entanglement, which means...
Right. Exactly, right. Yeah. Quantum entanglement means this. Everything's connected to each other. Okay, this is Nekuda. Nekuda is, what Reb Zil is writing, is that the Koyach HaGvul was Nichlal in the Koyach HaBilti Bal-Gvul. And through the tzimtzum, the Koyach HaGvul became revealed as a separate thing. And then is the spheres, then the spheres emerge, and once the spheres emerge, which means the spheres really, Esa spheres like Gnuzis, is really in the Koyach HaGvul of the Ein Sof. It's not a new thing, right? The spheres didn't emerge, the spheres were always there, they weren't seen. Because in the Koyach HaBilti Bal Gvul, of the Gvul was Bilti Bal Gvul. Because even Gvul was Bilti Bal Gvul, otherwise there would be Chasaron. And just when there was the tzimtzum revealed that the Koyach HaGvul is something that's outside of itself. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So I understand why was there a need from the Ein Sof
Yeah.
to the void to be tzimtzum in the first place into the spheres?
We spoke about this a few weeks ago. There's if you say why, then there's a chesaron. The definition of a question is a chesaron. If I say why and the answer is because, think about that. The moment I say because means that thing was not full, it needed a because. Correct? If I say the reason was because, means there's something that's here and it needs something outside of itself, it means that thing is not shleimus. So I can't talk about a reason. I can only say a taiva. That's what the Alter Rebbe says of a taiva frek mishkan kashas. He's not saying because you're too small to understand that. That's what you heard in yeshiva probably. Yes, you're too dumb to understand this answer. He's not saying that. He's saying because the definition of a taiva is that there's no answer. Because the moment you say answer, you're back to square one, which means that it's a chesaron. You can't say it's a chesaron. The best estimation of this idea is creativity. How you create. If you're creative. You don't, only the creative people understand this, but creativity doesn't come from a need. Creativity comes because there's an overwhelming sense of within that bubbles outwards. There's yicholos that comes out. It's an externalization of an internal bubbling.
Cook writes about that.
Huh?
Cook writes about the writing that I don't write because I can't stay quiet.
Right, exactly. Well, anyone that writes, right? Yeah, but I'm saying that the idea of need, you understand? Creativity. If you're a creative person, if you're not creative, you should become creative. But if you understand what creativity is, you understand that creativity doesn't come. You don't sit down, even if you want to learn. You say, I have to figure this out, so I'm going to make up some creative answers to figure this out. That's not the way creativity works. Creativity is something that rises up from within you and bubbles outwards. That's why the nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu liyas dir b'tachtonim. There was a nesava. There was a creative impulse that rises up as a desire to express. That's the best way we can understand that. Huh?
Isn't that by itself something that's like outside of you? Like
No, it's part of the. No. That's creativity. Great.
It's like a different.
No, it's you. You need to. Yeah. You're not. I'm sorry. Need is not a good word. It's not even want. It's not even need. It is. It is exactly. It just comes.
Creation is
Huh?
you are creative.
Yeah, exactly.
I am
Creation.
creation.
You don't do anything.
Creation is
Well,
exactly.
understand God is creation.
Correct.
Creation.
When we talk about that, when we talk about all the in time habriya is already the spheres. Time habriya is already the chesaron. If there's a chesaron, there can be a mila. I could say that the reason why is yigal shleimus chakosa, or the reason is begin the shtamoidim loy, or the reason is I give you 100 reasons why it says the Ramchal writes reason, the Arizal writes reason, the Zohar writes reason. These are all the reasons is post facto, post tzimtzum. We could talk about reason because that's already place. That's the possibility of chesaron. That's what he's saying. This is. I just want to go one shtickle over here. The next piece is taka from the Rashab, because you can't really learn this type of Torah without the Rashab. But it's actually it's a reduced version of the Rashab. It's through the Rebbe's Torah, and the Rebbe takes tens of pages from the Rashab, 9 bays, and writes it very, very short. And this is the word. In the Zesha Oyos Vakelim, I'll read it very quickly. B'shashim Mukul Echad. The Oyos and Kalim, really the light in the vessel, is really one. Kab Madregas, but the clothes, who we need spheres like Nuz. This is really the spheres like Nuzis, which he said these are the 10 spheres, the way they exist, which is the Koyach HaGvul in the Bilti Bal Gvul, which he said, right? In Biras. Shakam has spheres like Nuz. Yesh Dugum Zayim Kalim. Yeah, potential. Correct. It's gonus. It's not yet revealed. The shoyish of Essa spheres that we know that become geluyas, which is post tzimtzum, is this Essa spheres hagnusis, which is the koyach hagvul in the koyach habilta bagvul. Elo shem es wir sagen kol echad. The kmoish in is chalkas as sphere is chacham bin hu besphere is gluyes. Vashenk es wir sagen im klum kol echad. Beginnes is avers is achtus. There's no definition. No chachma bina gvura, right? There's no spheres yet. It's a koyach gvul that has the koyach for that. Al der so gam in is chalkas wir is kelim shem es wir sagen is kelim bis achtus. Aber prot is gam es wir sagen is kelim shnei yan. Zer shavay kol echad kol az what is it? Im tzad shonu ein sof. Who are shoyish eresev? And tzadish all the birds lights. Okay, 1 second. 1 second. Damit is in der Ratze, shegam acher shreitz beis dav in yon shreitz bei who. Lashim der Ratze. Chen hashoyish eura gvul k'moy shu lifnei tzimtzum. The shoyish eura gvul, which is just before, right? It's the koyach a gvul in the koyach a biltu bagvul. In lifnei tzimtzum, before the contraction. Who loyli in lifnei atzmai elachadi maratze shal insav baruch a biltu bagvul. So it's one with the Bilti Bagvul. So if it's one with the Bilti Bagvul, that Koyach Bilti Bagvul is actually Bli Gvul. Right? If in English saying, if the finite, the way it exists before the tzimtzum is gnuzes in the Bilti Bagvul, in the infinite, which is revealed as the infinity, so then the finite, the way it exists, the Bilti Bagvul, is Bli Gvul. That's why what it says in Sefer Yetzirah is, what's the language of Sefer Yetzirah? Essa spheres, blima. You just said essa spheres means you're giving a definition. You're saying there are 10. And then you're saying they're blima. Blima means it's infinite. There's nothing to touch it. What do you mean there's nothing to touch? There's chesed, there's gvura, there's tiferes. What do you mean there is something to touch? There's a midah. There's an expression. No. The essa spheres that we're talking about, these essa spheres, the origin of the essa, because remember, chakaka, which means it's emerging from the original thing. That essa spheres, which is the original, the way it's mapped out in Torah Sari, which is la'achar at tzimtzum, that these essa spheres become revealed, you should know that really they're bli ma, because in the shorish, the way they're in the essa spheres, the way they're koyach gvul in the bli gvul, the way they find it exists with infinity, it's actually bli gvul.
Meaning they were there in latency.
In latency, correct.
And then it
No,
was
correct,
activated.
correct. Okay.
Abdul Frankel, his Svarim Manchel would have been, and Nashachayim, he talks about like a movie projector. You know, the lights are on.
So you see it. Lights are on, you just don't see it. Okay. Let's go weiter. I wanted to say this shtickle. You don't have it in your pages, but he brings down, Tzemach Tzedek brings down in Orat Torah, Matzasi b'divrei Azmor, which means he said, I found this from my Zayda from the Alter Rebbe, and he's quoting from Moir V'chami, which he's quoting from the Mittler Rebbe. So Tzemach Tzedek is quoting from his Shver, the Mittler Rebbe, who's quoting from his Zayda, Alter Rebbe, and he says, Ela inyan shekachu de oise koyach hang magbil ha'or, eine bechines gvul mamish. She'ilo hoye bechines gvul mamish, ha'ene bechines alakus, shu bilti bal gvul. Ela oise ha'koyach hu gam ken koyach alakim mamish. Mishum, de be'emes macha shu kol yachol lahagba gam ken bechines gvul. Vlim loy be'efshar chas shal namzi koyach ha'gvul, eine kol yachol chas shal. This is the quote, right? Maacher, שיכולת להמציא, פוך אין זה מציע נפרח השם עצמו. אני מקום כאין זה, הוא אל שכל יחל להמציא גם בכינס גבול, הכל מאיתי. וכן ניקה קורא זכר שבכינס הצילס להגבול השפע גם בכינס הקוס ממש. That's the same word. The קורא הגבול is built into הגבול in the shirish. Now we have to understand another nekuda. Why 10? Okay, so we just established that there has to be koyach hagvul. That there is koyach hagvul, right? There has to be koyach hagvul. There has to be this koyach of finitude. Because if you don't have a koyach of finitude, then it's at the mechaseh b'shlemusa. There's a chasar in the shlemus. You can't say it's complete. Complete means that it has all potential. Potential to be infinite, potential to be finite. But why 10? Step is 10. So he's going to have an answer, but before we go to this answer, just want to share an answer that the Shomer Amunim has. Now, unfortunately, the Shomer Amunim is called today the Shomer Amunim Akadman. As it says on the thing, it's a Shomer Amunim Akadman. Who decided this is a Shomer Amunim Akadman? And the Rebbe are all safe as a Shomer Amunim? I don't know. Maybe some Chassidish man decided that. But the truth is the Shomer Amunim is the Shomer Amunim, the original Shomer is the Shomer Amunim. And the Shomer Amunim, the second one about it should be Shomer Amunim Achron. Not the Kadma, they made this the Kadma. Anyways, I'm not sure who decided this, but Shomer Amunim is a classic Sefer written by Rabbi Yosef Igras. Rabbi Yosef Igras was an Italian Rav, and he lived in this time of the Baal Shem. He passed away in 1730, so in time, a little right before Baal Shem, time of the Ramchal. And he was a Rav, a very big Rav. He was a Paisik. He wrote Divrei Yosef, Yosef. They just printed it recently. He was also a very famous loichem against Shabbos. Exactly, Nechem Chayun. He was very big fighter against Nechem Chayun. If you know what it is, important. If not, don't know what it is. Not so gay either. A big troublemaker. And he was a very big loichem. He was a Talmud. Rabbi Yosef Igers is the Talmud of the Rabbach, Rabbi Yomin HaKohen. Rabbi Yomin HaKohen was a very famous Mekubal that lived in Italy. He was a Talmud of Moshe Zechut, who was a Talmud from Talmid Ari. That's a few generations afterwards. And the Rabbach was the Shver and the Rebbe of Yeshai Basson. Who is Yeshai Basson? Exactly, perfect. So the Yeshai Basson was the Rebbe of the Ramchal. Rabbi Yomin HaKohen, we're not going to say anything, but there were things about him. But he was in Skabel anyways. For whatever reason, he was...
Is this like you saw on the Zara stuff?
No, Chas v'shalom. Other stuff that Rabbi Yosef Igros fought against very strongly. But he was considered a tzaddik and Atzef Yomov. Everyone, the whole Italy respected him very much. In the famous machlokes with Ramchal and the Chacham Venetzia, there's a letter from Yosef Igros to Yeshai Basson, which is the next generation. He's a Rabbach, so it's a little younger. And he asks him about this, because the famous Ramchal had a Magid, and he was saying things, and people were nervous. And also technically also to Shabtai and things like that. So he wrote a letter to figure this out, but we don't have the return letter because he passed away afterwards. He passed away in between, so we don't have it. But Yosef Igros wrote there was a big machlokes at that period of time. If tzimtzum kipshutei, tzimtzum lo kipshutei. Aman yachal chriki, Meshach Sidim writes tzimtzum kipshutei. And the first one to really come out very strongly, tzimtzum lo kipshutei, is Rabbi Yosef Igros. Again, Talmidei HaMagid, the Baal Shem, everyone accepted this mahalach. The Sefer is written a very nice Sefer, and a lot of Italian Svarim are written like this. I once spoke about this in Italy, that a lot of Italian Svarim are written like dialogues. Italians like dialogues. So the Italian Rabbanim also wrote in a dialogue. And the Sefer is Vikuchim, and there's a questioner and there's answers. There's Shaltiel, who's obviously the person that asks the questions, and Yoyada, who's the person that answers the question. And of course, he's the writer. He's writing both the questions and the answers. So it's hard to do this because you have to be honest. Both you can't just ask a question to say an answer. In the Biur HaSefiros, the questions are not much question. The question is like a question, then he gives an answer. He's just trying to tell an answer. Here it's like a vikuach, so he wants to get the other side. Here's the other side. This is a question. Okay, I got the whole thing. That is Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof is the Shlalshlis. But why 4 worlds? Why 10 spheres? What's this negaya? So this is what he starts writing. In the Galgalim, in the orbits of the way they saw the world, saw the unfolding of nature, they said there are 10 Galgalim. The highest Galgal Sechel, Galgal Makav, Galgal Mazalas, Veshiva Koichelechas. These are 3 orbits. Then there's the 7 Koichelechas, the 7 dominant stars. V'gam Olam Yetzirah, Shem Olam Malachim, Mevur Shem Esa Kittas. The Rambam writes that there are 10 Kittas, right? Ishim is the lowest level. Then you say if there's 10, there must be 10 everywhere. So obviously this is a very spiritual, it's a very spiritual argument because you're asking how there's 10 spheres and then you're answering because there's 10 galgalim. I mean, that's a very interesting, but he said this with the pardas Ramak writes his barichas to bring this. Then you have go. Okay, let's pull it back a little further. Tanakh and Torah, you have Asar Maras Nivra Olam. And the Torah and Klolas HaTorah Kula is in the like Rapsadi Gon writes that all the Aseres in the Aseres Adibros you have all Torah mitzvahs. You're familiar with this, right? That's Sefer Sadigon. God, this was It's not negated so much, but this is a response to the carrots. They also did the same chachmah, that they brought all the tag mitzvahs into the Asar Sadibris. So Besadi Gon did this, but the pshat is that there's Tarach Choisis, and the Asar Sadibris. So the David Melech Hashalom Chasav Sefer B'Asar Elulim. These are very interesting ideas of 10. And the Medrash, the Dashtei brings down this other Midrashim. This was, he says, that's the reason for the 10. Okay, let's go back. So this is like a spiritual reason. That we see replication of 10. You can say 10 dibris, and at the Sarah Mamoras, many different types of 10, and you'll say these are 10. The question is, why 10? It's not an answer. You're asking why 10 spheres, so you say there's a bunch of different 10s. But why 10? You're just pushing the question to the next thing. You say there's 10 spheres. So what are you going to say? 10 spheres because of Sarah Mamoras. Okay, so why the Sarah Mamoras? You're back to square one, back to the original. So this is a shaila that the BS is spheres, right? It's the same shaila. Let's see what page it is.
I think it's the next page.
It's the next page? Oh, okay.
The interesting about computers today, the codes, everything is ones and zeros, also 10.
Okay. V'im yes or shaila shal mehechish yesh spheres, avol matachir shem asara shem koich echad. Asara v'koich echad. Tshuva. You should know that the reason for this 10 is because the spheres is anything that's finite. V'chol haba b'gvul nigdar be'etzem u'b'makim. Has an essence and has a space. Shein etzem b'li makim ve'makim etzem etzem. Everything takes up a certain space. Anything gvul takes up a certain amount of space, right? That's the definition of gvul. Vein lepachas ben etzem koyach shalosh. And everything has 3. In other words, that's correct. That's the very simple language. It's a oirech, roichev, and oimek, which is in English translated with length and depth, which means.
String theory, you have also 10 dimensions.
Slow down. We didn't get the string there. Here we're holding still 3. So there's 3 dimensions, which is the dimension of the world. It has 3 dimensions, right?
Is it matter or percent?
Matter. He's talking about matter. Yeah, mukim, actual matter, physical matter has 3 dimensions. Now every dimension has 3 because you can take the oirach of the reich of the oimek, so everything has really ba'oivi, and that becomes oirach and rosh toich soich chitzoyin pnimi. That reads plays with these 3 in all variations, but this is the 3. And okay, and so it's 3 gimel pam and gimel. So it's 3 times 3, which is 9.
Why 3 times 3?
Because the oirach, if you take the length itself has an oimek and a roichev. Okay, so each one you can divide into 3.
As the Darizos is kalos.
Correct. That's the 9. By the way, I just want to say there's lahavdil, but Aristotle says the same thing. You should just know. It's lahir. I don't know if they took it from me, didn't take it, it's not negated. But this is where.
Not about the spheres.
About 10, about the number 10. 10 was a sacred number. That's sacred geometry. Yeah, correct. But this is the same nekuda. Lefisha eina etzem eskayim b'li makim, ve'eina makim eskayim b'li b'koich etzem, and if it's shalom etzem, makim apachas b'eser. Therefore, the essence is the space, is the essence, or we'll call it the nekuda. That's okay, fine. That's holding that space. So you have something that expands in length or expands in width. And then you have the nekuda that's holding that space, that's from there, that's an expansion. We have this in Chazal everywhere, right? In Chazal, this repeats this everywhere, that the like the Gemara says in Soita, where's a person born? The Roish or from the Tabor, right? So that's Machlokes if you go from the middle, or Machlokes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shua, if the world was created b'Nisan or b'Tishrei, same thing, the beginning or the middle. It's always the same thing, the beginning, the middle is the Tabor. So the Nekuda empty. It can be time, it can be in space, it can be in consciousness, it always functions. The Nekuda is what's holding what's holding the space of the Oirach, Reichav, and Oimek, and that becomes 10. So the 10 is the fullness of existence. That's he's quoting from the quoting from Sefer Yetzirah. We just learned. He says that it's 9, not 10, 10, not 11. But maybe you say that it's etzem also itself. So you have 4 times 3, so you have 16. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say that everything has dimensionality, but then there's the essence of that space, which is beyond dimensionality, which is holding the space of the dimensionality. So the one, or the infinite, to use this analogy, which is the koyach etzem, the atzmis, is that the nekuda.
It's like the kesser of every.
It's not only kesser. What you want to say? It's the container of all space, but the fact is that the nekuda of all space is all the same.
Which is within the tzimtzum.
Correct, but again, no. But let's say like this: the nekuda of olam of chutz la'aretz is Eretz Yisrael. If Eretz Yisrael is the taber is the taber, which means it's the midpoint. It's the etzem. So the Makam Hamikdash, the Kodesh HaKadoshim is menahushas kol olam kuli, which means it's the essence of space. If it's a nekuda of space, it has to be a nekuda of every space.
At least you're in the Shabbos.
Yes, correct. And the nekuda of Shabbos is time. So the nekuda of Shabbos is really, it's a circumference of the thing, which means it's in every single space of the circumference. It's a nekuda that's in all the parts of the circumference. Because that's a nekuda. The nekuda means that it's holding that. If it has 6 ksavos, then it has to be something that's holding that's it. That's the nekuda. That nekuda, that's the point that's holding the six sides, is the holding that size, which means the depth of each side is actually that nekuda. That's why I say we have the Shabbos. All the Chazal always miramas in this idea that the nekuda of everything, the depth of everything is the nekuda. And the nekuda is because that's the point that's holding all space and time.
The Rebbe was saying Bechinas Eretz Yisrael in Chutz La'aretz.
Correct. Yeah, that's the beginning of the That's why I say the vision is I see there's a Why? Why do we have such a vision, Michal? Or Yom Shekul Shabbos? Why do we have a vision that every day will be Shabbos and everything will become Eretz Yisrael? Why do we talk such language? Why Eretz Yisrael should be Eretz Yisrael? Because in the place in the Nekuda, that's the only truth. If you get to the Nekuda of everything is Eretz Yisrael.
Also the Ramchal's point of like that every Adam Kadma within each other.
Correct. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. That's a little bit even more deeper because they're in the place of the Adam Kadmon. Everyone includes everyone. That's even deeper, right?
It's interesting that he's counting this as one of the 10. This should really be.
So this is Malchus. If you want to tape it onto the spheres,
It's not the top, it's the bottom.
or Kesser, either way, Kesser or Malchus. In other words, if you want to put it onto the spheres that we call classically spheres, Kesser, Chach, Gvura, which Sefer Yetzirah doesn't do, by the way. And it's important to learn Sefer Yetzirah the way Sefer Yetzirah is learned. You can push a lot of things onto it, but Sefer Yetzirah doesn't talk about that. Later Kabbalah is going to say that these are the spheres and these are called. But in Sefer Yetzirah they're not called that. They're called Emek Tachas. It has different names. So, but what is it talking about? It's talking about what we'll call in more the modern version of Kabbalah, or the later up version of what we have from later Kabbalah. We'll say that's the Malchus, or that's the Kesser, which means that's the space that's holding the space. That's the Nekuda that's holding the space. This idea, is there a further idea? Because I think
It comes back again later on.
no, the Derech HaMunah has a little bit more arichas on this. Did I quote it from there?
We have a few there for
Kuf Chavtas. We have Kuf Chavtas, or we don't have it?
Yeah.
Okay. So here he brings down. So in Kuf Chavtas he brings down from Rebbe Zriel. You see that? Right? He's quoting from Yitzchak Saginar, Rebbe Zriel, which he asked him about the hechach of the spheres. Tshuva is a quote, Ad Khan, quoting from Bir Es spheres from Rebbe Zriel. This is Rebbe Meir ben Gabbai. This is a few hundred years later. And he says, Ke'ein sof shu bilti gvul l'bal tachlis hitzel l'kuda achas balas gvul v'shir l'tzerech nevroim. That nekuda achas, that point, is the source of all space. V'nekuda azois hoy l'bo b'gvul, since it comes into space, into gvul, into finitude, really it's infinite. Hitzel ki ein sof shu bilti bal gvul b'tachas hitzel nekuda achas balas gvul v'shir l'tzerech nevroim, which means the tzerech nevroim became nekuda, but it's coming really from the koyach of ein sof. Since it's coming from the ein sof, really it's ein sof. But when it comes and the nekuda becomes revealed, it becomes yashal teichur sof.
That sounds like they're not.
It sounds like what the Sefer Yetzirah wants to say, which is that whenever you're looking at finite space, ba'oimik, what you're saying is that the finite space is really infinity. That's the whole game. means that we're looking at the world. The Sefer Yetzirah is going to build a structure. It's going to build a structure of the human being, of the structure of the human. It's going to build a structure of creation, and it's going to say that the Ba'omek, you should understand that Ba'omek, whatever you look, you're really seeing infinity, Koyach Ein Sofius, that's revealed in the Nekuda, that's revealed in the which refracted into all the multiplicity that we look in the world. But if you get to the Nekuda, then you start from the beginning. The goal of Galifa B'Tir Allah, everything's really infinite.
All things that one Nekuda.
It's one Nekuda. Exactly. Everything is one Nekuda particularized. Let's go back into the actual the way Sefer Yetzirah. I mean, it's getting a little late, but let's what the Sefer Yetzirah says over here.
Back to Olam Malbush, I mean, let it
Yeah, let it yield. Correct. It was also correct. The same idea. But let's go over here let's go back into the Sefer Yetzirah. There was also another. We had a Kedushas Levi last week. We didn't learn. Okay, we'll hold it for a second. Let's go. Let's go. Let's read this, and we'll see what we have time for.
There's also a Ramban you wanted to.
And we're not going to get to it. So let's. Essa series within my Misper Essa. It's boys Chamish Keneged Chamish. What's the Chamish Keneged Chamish? What we're saying is like this. The general structure that we say with the spheres are that is Chesed Din Rachamim, which means that there are three columns: right, left, and center. Right, Chachma, right, Bina, left, Das in the middle, Chesed, Gvur, Tfers, Netzach, right, Yesoid, middle. Here is saying a different structure, which is Misper Esad's boys Chamish Keneged Chamish, which is 5 Keneged 5. 5 Keneged 5 makes it 11. Because there's something in the middle. Ubris Yichim Mechavenes Be'emtza. There's a Bris Yichim Mechavenes. There's something in Be'emtza. If we say there's something in the middle, what is that middle? There's a middle space. So you'll say that the difference, there's tension, okay? The tension is that there's a polarity. There's two forces. There's the force of the right side and the force of the left side. So that's boys is clearly it's trying to give an example of creativity, right? There's a Kaviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates through Af Yadin Yasa Aretz is like that through his hands Kaviyachal. It's a mashal. So it's creation, and then we create. How do we create? There's two types of creations that we're creating. One is a creation that we create through our hands. So the Yadayim will be representing the Yonam Askadim Saim, representing the creation through our hands. And then there's a creation through our bris, which is creating new life. If it's Chamish Keneged Chamish, what's in between? There's a mechovenes be'emtza. There's something that's holding this tension. You have the side of the right and you have the side of the left. These are in tension with each other. There's something that's bringing them together. What's the bringing them together? Look at the Lezenberg Gemaisa, the Pirush of Lezenberg Gemaisa. Do you have it? I don't know if you have it, but you have it in Sefer Yetzirah. He says, "Be'emtza it's boys haraglaim kach es spheres v'yachid olam mutzam bekulam al kisik v'odev v'zeh hashchina." That when in Sefer Yetzirah, the middle thing that's holding the space is the Or HaShechina. So the Shechina, in the classic way, we say the spheres, what's holding Chesed and Gvur together is Tiferes. What's holding Chacham Bina together is Das. But here he's saying that it's the Shechina.
What's the Shechina?
What's holding this? There's. Let's talk about it in our life.
The Ara, the Seder plate.
The Seder plate. Why? Where's the R?
The Ara is Malchus.
It's a different. That's something that's there's a different kudah. There's something that's holding the tension of reality of the right and the left column, which is, let's say, the expansive, creative, and the restrictive. However you want to understand these two things. In order to use your hands, you need a right and a left hand, right? Okay. In order to create something, you need two hands. The Gemara says that Gedolah Maisa Bereshus, Maisa Bnei Adam, Yosef Maisa Shemaim V'Aretz. Because Maisa Shemaim V'Aretz, if Af Yasa Shemaim is Yad, and Migdash Hashem Koinen Yedecha is Lashon Rab with that Hashem created. The Gemara beginning of Suvas. That it's Yedecha as we create, which means creativity comes through our hands. When you create something, I don't know if any of you play baseball, but if you know this game, especially the Americans, but I don't know the English. But if you play a game of baseball, you need to have. Let's say you're a righty, yeah. So the power of the right hand hits the ball, but if you hit without the left hand, you ever play baseball? You know what this game is? If you hit without the left hand, you can't actually have control. What the left hand restricts the power of the right hand. If you're a righty, the righty swings, the left hand is restricting. That's the gvura. In order to hit correctly, you need the right hand that's pushing, but you need the left hand that's gvura, that gives you balance, that gives you exactly the location. This is the two forces. You have the koyach of one koyach that's giving and expanding, which is a koyach mispashet, and then there's a koyach that we said many times. There's two basic powers in the universe, two koyachas that are pulsating through the universe. One is to procreate, to further, and one is to preserve. That's it. Those are the two forces. One is chesed, and one is gvura, which means every single thing in this world, anything, a human, a cat, a tree, and a stone, they're all doing two things. They're making sure that they're preserving themselves. So the sun is preserving itself. It ducks away from the sun, or pulls towards the sun to receive nourishment, to exist, and to perpetuate. It gives fruit to make further fruit. These are the two functions of everything in this world, which means that there's a koyach of chesed, which is ispashtus, and there's a koyach of gvura, which is preservation, which is to pull in. You're breathing out and you're breathing in. You're exhaling and you're inhaling. These are the two koyachs in this world. These represent in the hands, which is the koyach to create. There's the right hand and the left hand. In the feet, there's the left leg and the right leg. There's the bris, which is the power of speech, which is the power of creativity, which stands in between. That's the power that gives that holds the same thing in the koyach of the bris itself. What's holding this tension together is the shechin, is the light. It goes back to the same nekuda. What's holding the tension together is something that's higher than either side. Because there's an expression of this and there's an expression of that, but then there's something that's holding that together, which is the koyach that's the koyach ha'ein sofius, right? Where do we see the koyach ha'ein sof of a person? In two things. In speech, the real koyach is ein sof. The koyach ein sof, let's say I create something. Let's say I use my hands and I create something. When I use my hands and I create something, let's say physical, I create, let's say, I build something. I sculpt something. I paint something. If I use my koyach hand, it's gvul. It'll survive 100 years, 1,000 years, whatever. But it's a period of time. It's not eternal. What is something? Where is the gilui of the koyach ein sofius within the person? In two things.
In the writings, meaning the speech.
In speech. I'll explain you why in speech. And the way there's kayam b'min and kayam b'ish. So where do we see the nitzchis, the koyach ein sof, in the bria and in our own creation is through having children. You have children have children. It's not kayam b'ish. It's not. That's malachim, or maybe the Yerushalmi says maybe these are the celestial spheres, like the Shemesh and Levana, maybe. But it's kayam b'min, means the species exist. Bees go on Mesiris Nefesh for the queen bee. It's not Mesiris Nefesh. It's because they don't have kayam b'min, they have kayam b'ish. So they'll self-sacrifice for the min. For the purpose of the beehive, the particular bee will kill himself, or some animals actually they procreate and they die in the process. So why are they going to Mesiris Nefesh? Because it's not about kayam b'min, it's kayam b'ish. There's a perpetuation of this ish, of this species, and there's a collective that this species has to exist. So frogs are always going to exist. And this is the kayam b'ish. This is a koyach ein sofius. This is a revealing of koyach ein sofius in the bria. That's the brisa ma'or. Then there's also a brisa of the sosayim. What's the brisa of sosayim? There's doim etzameach chai and there's medaber, right? So there's different levels of creation. There's inanimate. There's doim, there's semech, which is vegetation, there's chai, which is animal, and then there's medaber, the koyach of speech. Why do we call the koyach of medaber the man that when the Targum writes, Vayhi lo adam nefesh chaya, it says the ruach mamala, and he became a man of speech. Why speech? Say he became a bal seichel. When you think about a human, what do you think about human? Homo sapiens. What do you think that humans are? Intelligent beings. That's the definition of a creature of a human being. You think is intelligence, but Chazal don't say that. Say the definition of a human being is a medaber. Why? Because the koyach medaber is a revealing of Ein Sofius. How? Very simple. How could I enter your space? Say differently. Everything Gashmias has a particular makom. If I want to move this table and this chair together, I can get them in very close proximity, but I can't get the table to be in the place of the chair and the table to be in the chair, or else I collapse the table and collapse the chair. The only conceptual space where two people can be in the same space together simultaneously is in dialogue. You have your seichel, you have your intelligence. Let's say I have my intelligence and I have my way of thinking. I can get close to you and can bump up against your body, but we're not going to actually merge. There's no V'hoy L'basa Echad is in the future, but in the present there's no L'basa Echad. There can't be L'basa Echad. The only way there can be L'basa Echad in a higher level is through speech. If I can tell you what I'm feeling and you can listen to what I'm saying, and that's creation. That's a koyach ein sofius. So when it says that you know Abba Zachayim B'yad HaLashon, that creation is through speech, because the only way we actually create true creation, koyach ruchni, koyach ein sofius, is either through speech or through physical procreation. That's what the Sefer Yetzirah is saying. That this koyach, now we're talking about the Ein Sof. Remember, this is what the Yisoid is. The Yisoid is that there's a koyach Ein Sof that's pulsating through everything. It's refracted into Esa spheres, Esa boys. You look at the hands, this hands, that hands, you're seeing all these things. You should know that there's a bris. What is it? Let's go back to the word bris. What is the word bris? In the Oitz Hashem, which is from the Susan Soidas, some say it's the Talmud Rabban, he writes Kishorshe Bara, that the word bris, the shorish of the word bris, is the same shorish. It's a two-letter shorish. It's a big machlokes. It's a two-letter shorish. It's three-letter shorish. But if we say two-letter shorish, Denush and Menachem is a famous machlokes. If you could say two-letter shorish, but let's say we say the two-letter shorish, which is bar. The shorish is bar. Bar means externalization. That's what it means. Bar, bara, the externalization. But the difference between bris and bara is that bara is Beis Reish Aleph. This is Beis Reish Taf. Obviously, what's the difference between Aleph and Taf? Aleph represents Kaviyachel's creation. Breish is bara Lakim, Lakim's creating, the Aleph. And Bereishis is our creation, the Taf. This is the final. This is the final, the finality of creation is the Adam. Achav V'Kedem Saratoni. The Soif Masa. The Soif Masa is the Adam. The Adam is the Taf, is the finality. But what's a bris? A bris says, what does the covenant say? A bris says that the relationship, what's a relationship of a covenant? A covenant means that there's equal. That's the definition of a relationship, of a covenant. A covenant means, even if it's a vassal state, because that's really what the mucker of the idea of a bris is, which is like there's a more powerful, Avram makes bris and these are all bris. What's a bris? A bris means you're very powerful, I'm less powerful, you're going to protect me, but I'm going to do something for you. Which means it's not exactly equal. It's not exactly, usually a bris is not exactly equal. There's one that's more powerful, but there's an exchange. Like, even though, America is a bal bris, kaviyachol, with, let's say, with a lot of countries around the world. America is much stronger, but they need their location for their airports, for their landing spaces. So that's a bris. It's a vassal state. I'll take care of you if you give me your location to land my planes. Which means one is more powerful, but the other one has a voice. We're saying is that the Boira Kaviyachol created us to be a Bal Bris, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be a Shutaf L'maisa Bereshis. Wants us to be a partner to creation. Doesn't want it to be just a receiver of creation. Wants us to be a partner to creation. So since HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be a Shutaf L'maisa Bereshis, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? What does the Creator do? He makes us have the Koyach Ein Sofius. He makes us a Medaber. He gives us he gives us a new breath of life, which is koyach mamala, which is the koyach of Ein Sofius, and he gives us the koyach to create Ein Sofius. Because since the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be in a bris with us, with the Shutzos L'maisa Bereshis, so because he wants to be a Shutzos L'maisa Bereshis, he has to give us what the creative power. What's the creative power? The creative power is either through our language or through procreation, which is that's our one. Yeah, correctly. So we have those. What? Writing is speech. It's ksiva kedibur. There's a big machlokes. There's a b'kiv eger. You want to know if you're allowed to say svir zoyim or b'ksiva. So Kiveya says if Amir should be ksav, that's a whole lumdas. But writing doesn't necessarily mean to speak. It means emoting your ideas, expressing your ideas, whether through writing, singing, dancing, it doesn't matter. An expression of what's going on in the inside to the outside, the expression is the koyach hadibur. That's the koyach ein soifius. So what the Sefer is saying is that the Essa spheres, blima, misper Essa, that's blima really is ein soif. These Essa spheres are reflected in our own life, which means that we have this creative power, just like Haviyachal, the Creator, created through these spheres. These are the prisms through which the creation was created. The same thing, we also have these powers. These powers are reflected in the right hand, the left hand, which is that we're holding the 10 within our body. It shows up in the middle column, which is the koyach of the Shechina, which is said from the Realizer Gemais, which is the koyach Ein Sof. Where does it show up? In the middle column, which is through speech or procreation, which these are the koyach of the Ein Sofius, which allows us to be a creator. And that's why it's so important of connecting with the hands. That's why we want to learn a shtickle from the Ramban or the shtickle from Basayin about lifting your hands above your head or mishal of your hands. If you look over there very quickly, I brought down from the Ari writes at the end that in Parsha Sekev, the Ari writes that you shouldn't mishalav. Shar Mitzvahs, he writes in Parsha Sekev, people mishalav the hands. I don't know if you know, but some people are makbid. You shouldn't put your hands right into the left hand. So he says, "Fishim koichas al yoni miniv smoil ve'el arvam v'al matoivu al adam shistaka b'chol shav yabetz beisav v'ham kina beis yad v'yas esas boys v'chol etzma shem alav vavei de mil yuden v'gematria etzba 163 the loyal Hashem zeh Yetzirah rosh tevis es shmayim v'sa'aretz. Shmayim v'sa'aretz is the etzba, which means the koich habriya. The koich habriya is within the hands, and you should be careful how you do what you do with your hands. This is why there's a whole Torah. If you're allowed to lift your hands during davening, the Sefer says you're not allowed to lift your hands above your head. Pinson says that if your hands lift up while you're davening and you're not mechaven, then you should know that means that you're bringing down a shefa. But you're not allowed to lift your hands above your head, or else you're fixing a light bulb. This is Makar from the Ari, yeah. But it comes from the Eser's voice, that there's Eser, Chesed, and Gvura. And you could be Mashal of them if you know what you're doing. Or you go like this, you can go, but you mix a finger. This is the way I do. You mix one finger out, then you just go like this. So you put your middle, instead of going this finger here, you go like this. It looks like from the outside you're doing the same, but it's not the same thing. Well, it looks like the shigah, but
what shouldn't you do? What can you do?
you don't do like this. Don't move your fingers like this, all the way in. You shouldn't mashal of your fingers, yes. Don't interlock them. If one is a little messed up, yeah. Or, again, if you want to use a Pinchas Karetz, the same thing Sefer Bar writes, now lift your hands above your head. We're going to learn a shtickle Ramban that he speaks about the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, and he talks about the same idea. He brings on the Sefer Yetzirah, that the Eser's boys are Keneged Eser's Eser spheres, and he says that's why you do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. The Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim is to recognize that your koyach of your yad is the koyach of Bria. That's the koyach of Bria. You know, the big machlokes of Rishonim. Why do you wash Negel Vaser in the morning? What? So there's the machlokes of Rishonim, right? What some Rishonim say because Yonah Vaskani is same. So maybe you touch the place. Okay, that's you have to wash. The Beis Yosef brings it down. Other Rishonim, right? Gathered Tilas Yaakov from Rameh ben Gaber brings it down. This is the mocker for Chassidim that they keep their kvart, they keep Negel Vaser next to the bed. Comes from Rameh ben Gaber. He says because you're not allowed to walk afterwards. The Litvische Taina that the Gross said that after Graf Pototsky, that was the tumor that was broken, and you could walk to your bed. You could walk to wash your hands because that. Yeah, so the shaila is if it was broken. This clipper was not broken because Litvische people are not makbid on this. But Chassidim are makbid to put a Negel Vaser next to the cord. This comes to the Leziak because the idea is. I'm just telling you, some days you do like this, some days you do like that, if you really be makbid everything. But the point is the Chassidim are very makbid. The idea is that there's another thing from Shem HaZohar. The Zohar writes that there's a tumor on the hand. But the Rashba writes that the reason why you wash your hands is kikoyen hanichnas lebeis hamikdash. That just like koyen hanichnas lebeis hamikdash has to wash his hands b'kir, the same thing also every single morning you have to wash your hands because tefillah is making korbanos tiknim. So they say for davening you're doing like korbanos, you have to wash your hands because today's your avoid is like the kohen. Everything you're going to do. This fits very nicely with the Ramban because the Ramban says that what you have to do, you have to wash your hands in the kiyar tomorrow. That's boys. If you're going to be creative today, you have to take your boys and you have to wash your hands. And then washing the hands is an awareness of what you're doing. Is that's why you do Natil Sedayim. Natil Sedayim is your milo Not you pick it up to moich in the das, because the other one's going moving down. What?
You should wash your feet also.
You're supposed to lift your hands up to your head.
Up to your head. Yeah.
Why not?
In the
What's
morning
the
also?
problem with
Livish don't know about this.
You have to bring it till here.
I told it to someone, he's like, I've never heard of this.
That's why it's avudram. It's not even Kabbalah. If you look at avudram, the avudram right. The avudram writes. You're not to
That's the lashon. I know.
That's avudram. The avudram says why say natilas yadayim? It should say tilva yadayim or something or.
He says it should have been the kiyas to time.
Nikiyas. Why isn't the natal? Natal is lashon that you have to lift up. Yeah, that's avudram, which means you have to lift up your hands when you make a bracha. Which means you're a PRE. What you're doing is you're lifting your hands and you're having kavanah that's now moichin. Instead of your hand, you're maskani is saying that your hands are down, and the lower parts of your body you're lifting them up. This is kiddush yadayim argayim. This is the idea.
The only limb that can both go both.
That's correct. That's because I know this is the creativity. This is the whole idea of creativity. We just said you can go to the highest places, you can go to the lowest places.
lifting it above the head?
It's a problem. You shouldn't do it, or else you're checking. You're switching a light bulb. You have to do something. But in general, a person should lift their hand above the head. But I just want to say that Pinchas Klarus writes in Pinchas that if a person's davening and all of a sudden the hand flies above their head, you should know that his ketulus and his kabbalah is a big bracha to your hands. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.